Good day, everyone. So this is our second module for the training of teachers on flexible learning. And I will be focusing on designing your course, the backward design process. I hope that from the first module, you already have a good understanding of what flexible learning is, including, of course, my expectation that you as a department have already discussed the answers to the questions in learning activity 1, because you will bring with you your answer from that activity to how you are going to design your courses. Definitely, the flexible learning model that you will be adopting and that we are currently implementing in our university will influence how we design our courses. So let me begin this module with an excerpt from Covey in 1989 from his article, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. To begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of your destination. It means to know where you're going so that you better understand where you are now so that the steps you take are always in the right direction. And I hope that as we go through this module, you will see how important this idea from Covey is in designing our courses. To begin with the end in mind. And so we are in a relatively new teaching and learning environment, a different battle, and using exactly the same weapon will not guarantee the same successes we had before because we are facing a different set of difficulties, of challenges, and of course, opportunities for us to grow and be better in our area. Thus, there is a need to innovate our own way of thinking. We have existing pedagogical guides that, when we thoughtfully carried out, can ensure that what we want in the future may be successfully achieved by using them as tools. We need to try other things for us to be able to design our courses that will fit the modality that we are implementing and that we will be implementing in the future. And the backward design is one important framework or guide that we can use for us to effectively plan our courses for whatever model of flexible learning we are going to adopt. Now, in terms of designing courses, one of the most important instructional design models is the ADDIE model, or ADDIE means analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. Now, ADDIE is commonly applied at the program level. But how can we do this at a course level since we are focusing on designing our courses? At the course level, analysis can be done through the following: analyzing the learners, the learning context, other factors that may influence the design of the course. We need to know this information. We need to analyze these things. We need to gather data from different sources. Analysis also includes defining the learning outcomes, especially in relation to the program learning outcomes. And another is structuring the learning content. Because part of our analysis is analyzing the content available or proposed or recommended by the different CMOs or professional organizations and other associations or institutions. Now, designing can be done by the same defining the learning outcomes, and it can also be done by structuring the learning content. So we are not actually modifying if there are existing learning outcomes, or we are changing the sequence of the contents. That can also be done. Development can be done by structuring the learning content and designing learning tasks and activities. We now develop our course plans or our syllabus so that it will fit whatever are the results of our analysis. And of course, when we implement, we do select learning resources for the implementation. We still design learning tasks and activities. Although we have developed it prior to implementation, we still develop new learning tasks and activities along the way. And of course, we have determining modes of and designing assessment. So this is how we can apply the ADDIE model at a course level. And these things will be very much applied as we follow the backward design process. So for this module, you should be able to describe the steps in backward design, review the existing course outcomes of approved courses in the curriculum, identify priority contents in structuring contents, and reorganize an existing course syllabus based on backward design. And as outcomes, at the end of this module, the teacher participants can first discuss relevant guide questions the teachers need to answer, to identify priorities in the courses, and restructure a learning plan for one module or one unit in their existing syllabus based on backward design. So these are the outcomes that we want you to be able to do at the end of this second module. Of course, with the assumptions that there is already an approved or reviewed course syllabus with its course outcomes and course outline, and there is a tentative or course plan or learning plan presenting content and others. And this will serve as a starting point for you, my dear teacher participants, for the 4 modules that will follow, most especially the 3rd module. So let's begin with the backward design process. But let's take a look at this a triangle here. In geometry, triangle is the most stable geometric figure. When put into a plane, it symbolizes stability. So just imagine a waiter holding a tray, and how many fingers does the waiter use? There are 3, because that is the most efficient way of achieving balance in the tray. And in our teaching and learning process, there are 3 important aspects that we need to achieve stability. We have the learning goals and objectives, the teaching and learning activities, and the feedback and assessment. And all these 3 components must be stable and must be interdependent with each other, meaning they have to be aligned. And one way to ensure alignment is to follow the backward design process. So the backward design process is a framework or a guide for us to develop our plans. And compared to the usual curriculum development process, where we identify our objectives, our content, then learning activities, and then evaluation procedures, the backward design starts with identifying our desired results. So this will be the big ideas and skills. Second step or second stage will be determining acceptable evidence, likened to the idea of assessment. And the third stage is to plan learning experiences and instruction, or to identify what are the different learning events that we will be doing so that we can achieve these desired results, and so that students may be able to produce or perform the acceptable evidences of learning. For the first stage on identifying desired results, we have the question: what should students know, understand, and be able to do at the end of the course? This is our desired results. Desired results can be in the form of outcomes, performance targets, or objectives or goals, depending on the nomenclature that an institution is using. But for higher education, since we're following outcomes-based education, we call these desired results in general as outcomes. So what are other questions that we need to address for identifying desired results? What are the learning outcomes? One what enduring understanding are desired. When we say enduring understanding, these are in backward design, these are stated in the form of a question. And this is a goal that requires an answer that is transferable or applicable to new and different situations. So what do we want our students to achieve as an enduring understanding that can be applied in different situations? Especially in our case that we are trying to produce professionals who will be in the workforce in the future. We need this enduring understanding so that these students may be able to apply this in different situations that they will face in the future. And of course, we could include here what are the curriculum expectations, or it could be possible that what are the graduate attributes. It will include program educational outcomes. They have to be studied as well. Okay? Those are the different desired results that we need to identify. But for this course planning, or for this module where you will be focusing on a course syllabus, these desired results are the intended learning outcomes. You will see later where can we find, or where do we put this intended learning outcomes. The second, before we proceed to the second, this is a side note when it comes to refining the learning outcomes. Okay? So that when we make our syllabus, when we review our syllabus, we have a way to improve or to enhance how we can state our learning outcomes. Now, since the intended learning outcomes are working as desired results, they have to be smarter, not simply smart, smarter, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound, and we have the ER, evaluated, and the last R is recognized or rewarded. Especially in online learning or in flexible learning models, we need to evaluate these desired results, these intended learning outcomes, and they have to be rewarded and recognized for us to further the motivation, the engagement, and the discipline of the students when it comes to attending to their academic responsibilities. And of course, these learning outcomes, this is the intended learning outcomes, must be student-centered as a focus of flexible learning. However, we can still check the quality of our intended learning outcomes by using the ABCD method. So what is the ABCD method? ABCD method can also be used to ensure the outcomes are refined. A means audience, B is behavior, C is condition, D is degree. We have here an example of a learning outcome. At the end of this module, that is actually the learning condition, because the condition is that they have to finish the module. So at the end of this module, you, that's the audience, okay, who are the learners in that activity, you should be able to formulate, that's the behavior, what will be the expected behavior that the students need to perform or produce at the end of the module, to formulate a detailed plan for delivering a course outline, that's the behavior. Now the degree is working as a degree of proficiency or a criteria of success. Now the detailed plan is a success if it achieves the degree or the criteria, which is it integrates constructivist learning principle. It is not as simple as a detailed plan, but it must be integrating constructivist learning principles. So that is the use of ABCD method in refining our learning outcomes. So a question is, should every learning outcome have an audience, behavior, a degree, specially condition? In our format, in our learning plan in our university, the condition can be stated as 1 when we have our syllabus. That will be at the end of the course, the students should be able to, so we have the same condition and audience. But if you will be developing, for example, a module, okay, and then you will be stating your learning outcomes there, it is very possible that you will change the condition and how you state the audience. Like for us in teacher education, instead of saying the students should be able to, we are saying the pre-service teacher should be able to. Okay, things like that. So we proceed now on the stage 2 of the backward design, which is to determine acceptable evidence. So after knowing what will be your desired results from your students, you need to identify now what will be the acceptable evidences, which will answer the following questions. What are the acceptable pieces of evidence that may tell you and them, of course, that the learning outcomes have been achieved? So what will we accept as evidence of student understanding and proficiency? What authentic forms of assessment may demonstrate the learning outcomes? And what criteria will be the basis for gauging understanding? So the backward design orientation or the process suggests that we think about a unit or a course in terms of the collected assessment activities. What do we want them to perform or to produce at the end of our course or at the end of a particular learning module? So this approach will encourage teachers and curriculum planners to first think like an assessor before designing specific units and lessons. It's like, what will be our assessment activities? And when we know that we want our students to perform this or to achieve this, it will be easier for us to identify what are the most appropriate activities that we can give to our students. What will be our strategies, our methods, our approach, our techniques in teaching. And that will be on the third stage of understanding by design to plan learning experiences and instruction. So here, we answer the questions, what enabling knowledge, facts, concepts, or principles, and even skills like procedures, processes, strategies will students need in order to perform effectively and achieve the learning outcomes. We also answer questions like what activities will equip students with the needed knowledge and facts, what will need to be taught and coached, and how should it be best taught, and what materials and resources are best suited to accomplish this. Now note that here is like already the instructional planning where we identify our learning experiences, our strategies, our methods, our sequence of lessons, and even we can apply here how we sequence our contents. And sequencing our contents or prioritizing our contents, especially in flexible learning, is very important. We know the difference of the pace of learning and teaching between face-to-face, residential face-to-face, and online learning, or in any flexible learning modality. The pace of learning will be different. And so we need to carefully think of how we prioritize and organize the contents of our courses. So that is generally the backward design process. In summary, we have first about the learning outcomes. What do I want students to know how to do when they leave this course? And then we proceed with identifying our assessment activities. What kinds of tasks will reveal what students have achieved, whether students have achieved the learning objectives you have identified as the course designer. And lastly, for your instructional strategies, what kinds of activities in and out of class will reinforce your learning objectives or learning outcomes and prepare your students for assessments. So that is generally the backward design process. Now, I strongly believe that the backward design process ensures the alignment of the three components of our teaching and learning process. Now, what if the components of a course are misaligned? According to Eberly Center in 2021, if assessments are misaligned with learning objectives or instructional strategies, it can undermine both student motivation and learning. It can actually influence negatively how students are motivated, how they will be more engaged, and how they can discipline themselves with the different courses that they are facing, especially in a flexible learning modality. So let's consider this scenario. Your objective is for students to learn to apply analytical skills. So apply analytical skills, and based on Bloom's taxonomy, that could be almost at the higher order thinking skills. Okay? But your assessment measures only factual recall. So there is a misalignment on the level of thinking. They were able to learn how to apply analytical skills. However, you did not assess them properly. You simply use an assessment focused on factual recall. Consequently, students hone their analytical skills and are frustrated that the exam does not measure what they learn. I think this is not a new experience or a new information or a new idea about the teaching and learning process, because we have been hearing students saying that wala naman to sa exam, or wala naman to sa mga lessons, wala naman to sa mga modules, wala namang na-cover na ganito during this term. And that could really frustrate our students. So in terms of structuring content, I have mentioned this under stage 3, and this can also be done in stage 2, of course. When we identify our desired results, we can actually identify which are the priorities for this course. But basically, this is largely applied on stage 3, when we already plan our activities and instruction. So our content can focus on different topics, skills, and resources. And we need to make sure that our content, our contents are interesting, useful, and essential. They are interesting to know, useful to know, and essential to know. At the same time, we need to consider this image on how we prioritize our contents. At first, we identify what are the contents that are worth being familiar with. Of course, that will be a large area of knowledge or a large area of content. From that, we can identify what are the things which are important to know and do for our students. And lastly, we can focus on what are the enduring understandings that we need our students to achieve. So according to Wiggins and McTighe in 2005, they have provided us an example on how we can prioritize our contents based on the image from the previous slide. So for example, we have the context of the introductory course in statistics. So what are the contents which are worth being familiar with? They are simply in the area, but they are not on the what they need to know and to do and enduring understand. But they are worth being familiar with, like the history of the bell curve and the key historical figures. Now, the contents that are important to know and do could be the following: the knowledge of measures of central tendency and variation, and skills in plotting data. These are important to know and do because the skills related to the statistics can be better achieved if they have this knowledge and skills. Now, enduring understanding can be sampling. And when we say sampling, that can be applied in different situations. Margin of error, finding patterns in data, that's a very important skill. Making predictions, determining the meaning of average, and developing a fair solution. As course designers, we really need to identify these enduring understandings that our students need to achieve in our courses. And how can we organize this enduring understanding in our learning activities and instruction? Are there already contents that you can identify which can be removed from your course, or which could be given list emphasis in your course? So these are useful guide questions that we can answer when we structure the content of our courses. So what are you including? Primarily because it is covered or included in the required seminal work or textbook. Will that be your consideration in including this content? It is stated in the course syllabus provided to you based on the previous offering. You feel strongly about it, like it is your personal passion or advocacy. You were informed by your experience as a student and as a teacher. So you have seen as a student before, this content needs to have more emphasis. Recommended by colleagues who are also experts in the field and others. So this could be our guide questions on how we structure content or on how we select or prioritize contents in our courses. We also have what are you including so that students have the prerequisite knowledge and skills to continue to the rest of the course, to the studying of the discipline. You have to identify contents in which you believe the students have the prerequisite knowledge and skills for them to successfully learn that particular content. So you have to check the subjects before your course. Okay? You have to check if there are contents in the courses that you have taken previously and align that with the courses or the contents of the course that you are trying to design. Because it is central to the discipline, like considered as part of the core ideas based on standards set, or possibly because of a higher chance that it is included in high-stakes assessment, such as licensure examinations. So the licensure examinations can influence the content that we include in our courses. This is very important because this will be part of the licensure exam. Now, those are the things that you need to know about designing your course based on the backward design process. So I believe that you have seen already how this works. We first identifying the desired results. Okay, what do we want our students to achieve? And then after that, we identify already the different assessment activities or assessment tasks that will serve as acceptable pieces of evidence that they have achieved the learning outcomes. And then when we know already what we want them to achieve and what we want them to produce or perform or to accomplish, we now identify the learning activities or instructional strategies so that we can help them achieve the results and perform or produce or accomplish the assessment activities or assessment tasks. So if for example, if your acceptable evidence is that they can speak fluently, of course, it is expected from you as a teacher that you will be teaching them how to speak fluently. Now, the question is, what will be your method on teaching them how to do that? What will be your creative techniques, your strategies? What will be the materials, resources that you will be using? If you are thinking of flexible learning, you also have to think of how are you going to schedule the activities. Will there be offline activities, online activities, asynchronous, synchronous, and many other aspects. That's how we can achieve properly the backward design process in designing our courses ready for flexible learning. So for this module, these are the activities that are expected from you. First, you will now be accomplishing learning activity 2, which is a forum on identifying priority contents. So here are the instructions. So choose one course which you have handled or will handle in the next semester to frame the context of your answer for this forum. Indicate the course number and descriptive title, whether it is a general education course, a practicum course, a core course, a major course, or any kind of course. Second, given the approved outcomes for the chosen course, answer the questions. Okay? What other relevant guide questions can you suggest aside from the ones provided beforehand that may help the teachers identify priorities in their course design? Next question is that you need to answer: what questions should they ask to help them classify content as negotiable and non-negotiable, essential, useful, and interesting, or as worth being familiar with, important to know or do, and big ideas and core tasks, or we call them as enduring understanding. I think when we say negotiable, are these things could be removed or could be given less emphasis. But for non-negotiable topics or contents, these are really required for them to take, like those which are appearing in their board examinations or licensure examinations. So kindly provide 1 to 2 guide questions that you think other HEI faculty should ask themselves when they redesign their course. And your guide questions will be based from the questions given in instruction number 2. Share answers as a forum entry on the LMS. Okay, do not try to read the other participants' posts. So do not read and then reply. You have to reply first, your answer, and then after which you can read the replies of the other participants. They may provide other perspectives which you are yet to explore as the course designer yourself. So you need to post first, and then after which you can identify if you have the same thoughts with other instructors from the different departments. Another activity for this module is the assessment activity, and this is a major output for this training: reorganizing your course learning plan. The objectives to be addressed here are the following: review the existing course outcomes of approved courses in the curriculum, identify priority contents in structuring contents, and reorganize an existing course syllabus based on backward design. And the outcome is to restructure a learning plan for one module or one unit in their existing syllabus based on backward design. Meaning, you are going to restructure the learning plan of an existing syllabus that you are teaching this semester or you will be teaching next semester. So focus on the same course which you have chosen for the forum activity. Again, we need to be consistent on our choice so that we will not be, we will have a focus on the same content, the same course, especially that the activities for the other modules of this training are related. Review the existing syllabus for this course. Select a unit, a chapter, or a module of the course that may be studied online, offline, asynchronously, synchronously, etc., based on the flexible learning model your department intends to adopt, based on your department's answer in learning activity 1. Review the alignment of the course outcome or outcomes with the intended learning outcomes in the learning plan. So from the chosen unit, chapter, or module, take a look at the course outcomes of the course of the subject and check if they are aligned with the intended learning outcomes found in the learning plan. Do they clearly indicate the desired results? Is there a need to revise these outcomes to make them smarter? As this activity summarizes the potential of backward design as an approach to planning your course, chunking its content, and starting the course or module development process towards a flexible learning design. So this is the module output. The output expected from you is to draft a learning plan following the backward design. As you can see, this is different from the format of the learning plan in our existing syllabus because this format here of the learning plan follows the backward design. Please accomplish the column in order. First is the week number and time allotment. That is very helpful for flexible learning, where we try to identify the week number and time allotment of the intended learning outcomes. That for this week, these are the intended learning outcomes to be covered. And then, what are the topics related with this intended learning outcomes? After knowing the topics, of course, you need to prioritize. You need to identify if these are non-negotiable topics or negotiable topics. And then after knowing the topics, are going to identify the assessment task that you will be doing for as acceptable evidences that they have achieved the intended learning outcomes. And then your methodology, and lastly, your resources. Let me show an example of this restructured learning plan based on backward design. So this is a course syllabus in the subject Technology for Teaching and Learning 2. And I have implemented this already this semester with my students, together with the other materials that we were able to produce in our training with UPOU. So I started the subject or the course with this learning plan. This is on week 1. Okay? And the intended learning outcomes are, at the end of the course, that's the condition, the student should be able to, that's our audience, and then we have their 3 intended learning outcomes for week 1. Now for these 3 intended learning outcomes, we have the topics for unit 1, the review of technology for teaching and learning. After knowing the topics to be covered for the intended learning outcomes, I identified what are the assessment tasks that I need to do for this intended learning outcomes. Of course, you need to align your assessment tasks with the intended learning outcomes. For defining basic concepts, a summative quiz can be given. Determining the roles of ICT, I asked them to make a concept map because they have to relate together the different roles. And we have there to discuss learning theories, I will be asking them to make a lesson exemplar analysis output. Because when they do the lesson exemplar analysis output, they will be discussing how are the learning theories applied in the sample lesson that they have watched. So what are the methodology here? Independent learning activity, okay, synchronous interactive lecture discussion, and watching different lesson exemplars. These are the methodology for my students. And as you can see, it is a combination of offline learning. We have the independent learning activity using the self-learning module. We also have online for synchronous. So it's very important that we can see in your methodology the flexible learning modality. And lastly, we have the resources. What are the resources to be used for us to be able to implement these methodologies. We have the self-learning module, that's a resource, a laptop, a Google Calendar, and a Google Meet, and YouTube videos and some books needed for the contents. So this is an example of a learning plan that you will make. And this is exactly what we want you to submit for module 2. That's exactly the format. You have the course syllabus, you have the header, you have the course descriptive title, prerequisites, credit units, time allotment. It's simply the same with our existing OBE syllabus. And then we simply have to put here a part of our learning plan. Now, I will not limit you to one chapter. If you wish to submit more chapters or more modules or more units or more parts of the learning plan, that will be very much better. That will be very much better. So if you have the luxury of time, please go beyond the expected output for this module. Okay, so that is the assessment activity for module 2. Again, please, when you redesign, follow the sequence found in the columns of the format for the learning plan for this activity. Start with week number and time allotment, and then the intended learning outcomes, the topics, the assessment task, methodology, and then resources. If you're going to simply copying from your existing syllabus, that will forfeit the idea that we are trying to reorganize our learning plan to flexible learning. So please start with the assessment, with the desired results, the acceptable evidence, and then our instructional plan or our learning activities. So for here, this is the sequence that you will be filling in. So in saving your output in PDF, please follow the file name format, the department, and then learning plan in the descriptive title of the course. Example, professional education, that's the department, and then learning plan in the descriptive title, technology for teaching and learning 2. This is individual. Okay? This is individual. Submit your output in your school's submission bin. So there will be 5 submission bins in the LMS, one for SAB, one for SIAIT, one for SHANS, one for STE, and one for SGS. You are given 5 days to accomplish this. So I think that will be enough time for you to make that learning plan. It's actually very easy because it's only one chapter expected from you or one unit expected from you. But if you wish to go beyond, you are very welcome to do so. So let's end this module with this from Gary 2008. Online students need to feel an instructor presence in their classes. Thorough explanations and effective communication help fulfill this need and can transform a mediocre online course into a great one. And it all starts with the syllabus. That's all for this module, and here are the references that I use. Thank you very much, and God bless on your learning journey towards flexible learning.